Hello and welcome to the DevOps India Summit 2019 here at Bangalore in India. My name is Shriya Kumar and joining me now is Dr. Topo, Senior Director and Senior Distinguished Engineer at Capital One. Topo, as is famously known, played a key role in transforming the DevOps culture and business at Capital One and also brought big changes around open source enterprise as well. Thank you, Topo, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And how do you find your experience at the DevOps India Summit so far?
So last year I could not come because it was kind of short notice, but this time I told Niradri beforehand that let me know way in advance so that I can plan my travel. And I came this afternoon. I'm really impressed to find what I see. You know, there are a lot of people, a lot of energy, and I kind of went into one of these breakout sessions and very energetic. So far, so good, and I'm expecting more tomorrow.
And is this your first time in Bangalore?
This is the first time I'm here in Bangalore. It's kind of weird that I work in IT and technology area, but never been to Bangalore. But I don't know how that happened, but that's how it happened. So I'm here now.
And we are glad to have you here as well, and hope to see you in the coming years as well.
Absolutely.
All right, the theme of this year's conference is DevOps and Cloud, collaboration for a business success. How do you think DevOps and Cloud come together and work together to ensure business success?
Yes, so to start with, we kind of hit two words. One is DevOps and one is Cloud. DevOps is all about delivering high quality software faster to customers' hand, the end user. And there's a lot of collaboration and teamwork needed to make that happen. And one of the key things around that particular area, how do I deliver my product updates to the end user faster, there's a key thing that traditionally had been a challenge, which is infrastructure. And the cloud kind of solves that. And I kind of go beyond the cloud and just talk about technology and infrastructure as code, because that's kind of the underlying principle. How can you enable the developers to get their code into production and testing as fast as possible? So cloud is just world, is all about the technology, and infrastructure code in more particulars. In this particular case is more meaningful to a developer.
Right. And you have been a big contributor to open source projects. Hygieia is one of them.
Yes.
Tell us something more about it.
The way we had before all these changes happened, and it's not only about Capital One, it's overall big enterprises. They traditionally used open source but never acknowledged publicly or deliberately that they use open source, even though they have been using open source for a while. And my point was that it's about time that big enterprises kind of adopt and adapt open source, not only consuming open source but also contributing to open source. And there are many reasons behind that. And we can talk about that more if we have time. But overall, as big enterprises, it was about time that big enterprises contributed to open source and not just consume it. And Hygieia came about around the same time as we were going through this DevOps transformation. And it was one of the big areas that people struggled with at that time, and they even struggle now. And that's why we kind of created this tool internally within Capital One and used it and open sourced it. And it solved two purposes. One, the gap was kind of fulfilled, or a vision was created. And secondly, it was a vehicle for Capital One as a big enterprise to contribute to open source. It was not easy to do that, as you can tell, but we actually did it and finally made it happen, and I'm so happy about this even now.
Right. And when we talk about open source projects, it's all about sharing.
Correct.
And when we talk about DevOps, it's all about sharing as well. And the first thing that comes to our mind when we talk about sharing is security. How do you think DevOps and DevOps and security come hand in hand, and how do they work as a collaborative effort?
So it's not about just security, it's about all the aspects of a software delivery lifecycle that comes into play. Starting from developers to even the designers or the product owners, to security, the tester, the infrastructure guys. It's all kind of threaded together in a uniform manner to make the whole thing happen. Security is big part of that. Right. Of course, it needs to be, But if you think about it, security was always there. It's not that it just popped up just because of DevOps. It's just that the way of working security into the whole thread of things is what changed. And that's where DevOps comes in, which basically says that principally you cannot just lie or live in a silos. You need to come together and collaborate with all the other parts in that software delivery lifecycle to make sure that your security concerns are met.
Right. And in one of your recent talks, you spoke about the concept of clean room. Can you tell us something more about it?
Yes, it's not my concept. It's been there for ages. I came from semiconductor material science background. And there's a concept called clean room where all the devices or all the semiconductor processes that go out and make these nice electronic chips and other things, they go through a strict quality control phase, meaning that you actually have a room, and it is called clean room, where all the variations of your environment is monitored, and not only that, they are prescribed that you can have impurity level of that, you can have your temperature around that range, and all that kind of stuff. And when people actually go in, they actually wear a different kind of dress, and they are completely kind of quarantined, if you will,
right.
And they are prevented from introducing any defect. So kind of taking that same principle and applying it to software processing, if you will. Okay. So taking the manufacturing science principle and applying it to software engineering as a process to make sure that you have defined your criteria of your software delivery life cycle, and you are measuring it. And every time you see some variations that are beyond your limits, you kind of stop and correct that and then proceed again. So that's the whole thing. And there are some, I have some blogs and other articles that we can talk about later. But overall, it's a set of principles that you give your software delivery team to follow, and you measure those as much as you can, and then determine whether a particular version of software can go out to production or not.
All right, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And speaking of DevOps again, how do you see the future of DevOps in the coming years, the next 5 or 10 years?
So this is the 10th year of DevOps, and like any other technology trend or big word technology terms, it didn't go away. It stayed there, and I think it's going to stay. Whether DevOps becomes SRE or some other things, that's people to decide and communities to come to terms to. But I think the overall principle of collaboration, doing it faster, doing it cleanly, doing it securely, and doing it to the effect that the customers are the final, have the final say in whatever you have delivered is acceptable or not. The whole principle of that is going to stay. Whether you call it DevOps or not is a different question.
Right. So it's all about the terms that we are using, but the actual effort is still ongoing.
Correct. And I think people are still trying to define DevOps, and that causes a lot of friction and debate. But at the end, instead of saying or asking what is DevOps, if you want to answer why is DevOps, then things become simple. Because at the end, as I said, the main purpose of DevOps and any of this technology transformation is to deliver high quality software to the customers as fast as possible.
All right. With that, thank you, Topo, for speaking with us. It was a pleasure having you here.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, that was Topo Pal from Capital One with me, Riya Kumar, at the DevOps India Summit 2019 here at Bangalore. Thank you for watching.